In this three-part video series, I am presenting an overview of Buddhist history, beliefs and practices. Each video ends with some biblical reflections, and this is the second video of the series which focuses on the core beliefs of Buddhism. Some essentials are basic to Buddhism in almost all its forms. And many of these are graphically captured by the wheel of life. Look at this picture. It is but one of the many representations of the wheel of life. Notwithstanding the great variety of artistic depictions, the essential structure of the wheel of life remains constant. In the hub are three animals representing three poisons, as they're called, three poisons. And the Dalai Lama explains, quoting from him, "Since beginningless time, our intrinsic Buddha nature has been obscured by the forces of ignorance, greed and aggression, as symbolized by the pig, the rooster and the snake depicted in the center of Tibetan paintings of the wheel of life. And these creatures of the mind obscure our limitless inborn potential and are the root cause of our frustrating transmigrations through cyclic existence." So the idea here is that ignorance, greed and aggression create the illusion that each of us is a unique and important individual. And it is because we suppose we are unique selves that we remain locked into the cycle of frustrating transmigrations. And so the antidote is to lose our individuality through realization of our Buddha nature. The entire wheel is held by a monster who wears a crown of 5 skulls. So each transmigration ends inevitably in death. That's the symbolism there. Impermanence, that's what the monster represents, traps all reborn sentient beings. And so the wheel represents what's called samsara, that is, our frustrating transmigrations through cyclic existence. And Buddhists call these rebirths, not reincarnations. They are frustrating because it is highly unsatisfactory to be reborn. And the three essential characteristics of reality for the Buddhist are non-self, impermanence, and unsatisfactoriness. The word is dukkha, which is often inadequately translated as suffering. It includes suffering, but it's actually bigger than that. Better translated as unsatisfactory. Now, this picture shows not only the central circle, the hub of the wheel of life, but you'll notice also a second concentric circle, which is split into 2 halves. And on the left-hand side, you have rising figures experiencing a positive rebirth, and they are making progress towards enlightenment. That's the symbolism there. On the right-hand side, by contrast, you have a depiction of negative rebirth because these beings are regressing. And in this version of the Wheel of Life, these regressing figures are naked, chained, and they descend with terror on their faces into a hell realm, where they become hell beings. Now, Buddhists especially think of karma in explaining this. One's actions predetermine the nature of future rebirths. But one's actions include those accumulated in past rebirths. And so people must bear some personal responsibility for being born with deformities or handicaps or into unfortunate life situations. Philosophically, karma is habit energy. If one develops the right habits, particularly right habits of mind, then this generates positive energy towards ensuring a more favourable rebirth. Now, such positive energy is generated by observing the so-called 5 precepts. Don't kill, that's any life forms, don't kill. Don't steal, number 2. Don't commit sexual misconduct, number 3. Don't lie, number 4. And don't have anything to do with intoxicants, that's drugs and alcohol, that's number 5. Now, none of these things are evil in themselves, but only bad in that they are not conducive to the calm, controlled and focused mind that is needed for making progress towards enlightenment. And until enlightenment is attained, then one will continue to experience rebirth after rebirth after rebirth. And in most Buddhist sects, the chances of being reborn as a human are extremely low. The third circle, which is the largest in this depiction, is divided into 6 segments, and each is a realm of existence into which one might be reborn. And karma dictates even the particular kind of sentient being that one will become. Immediately below the monster's mouth is the realm of the devas, or divas. They have godlike abilities. They live for vast epochs in paradises, devoid of suffering. But it's still characterised by impermanence, by unsatisfactoriness, and a failure to grasp the reality of non-self. And the time comes when these gods are also reborn. Shakyamuni was a deva or diva in his penultimate rebirth. Shakyamuni attained enlightenment in the human realm, which is the most desired realm for advancement. However, bad karma, for example, a life of greed, might cause someone to be reborn in the third realm, that of hungry ghosts. And these beings have bloated bellies but pinholes for mouths. And any food or drink they manage to consume causes excruciating pain in their bellies. Even more terrible than this is to be reborn as a hell being, which is the fourth and bottommost realm. And all versions of the Wheel of Life show many forms of torture. There are many hells. Some are hot, some are cold, and the worst are cold hells. But even this state is impermanent, and even here it is possible to accumulate good karma and thus be reborn in a higher state. The fifth realm is that of animals, and the sixth that of warlike beings who kill and are killed. In his former beginningless rebirths, Shakyamuni has spent time in all of these realms. And then, of course, if you look at this picture, there are 12 sections comprising the outermost concentric circle. And these illustrate the law of dependent origination. The idea here is that existence, whether physical or mental, is but an ever-changing series of interdependent events that flash by like the frames of a movie. Buddhists do not believe in nothingness. They do believe there is a reality. What Buddhists do believe in is no thingness. That is, there is no thing that has enduring, permanent substance or identity. And this applies to all sentient beings, including humans. So hence, Buddhist belief in non-self. And so, for example, in his book, Joy of Living, the current Dalai Lama states, assertions of an independent self or an independent creator contradict the presentation that things arise merely in dependence on their causes. Now, this belief appears to render pointless all efforts to accumulate good karma. For if each moment I am a different non-entity, a contradiction in terms, then how can it ever be possible for non-me to ever direct my efforts to achieving any desired consequence? The exception to impermanence is Buddhahood, the realization of our intrinsic Buddha nature. In another of his books, Widening the Circle of Love, the Dalai Lama explains, this clear light nature, basic and luminous, is the final root of all minds, forever indestructible, immutable like a diamond. Only upon realization of our Buddha nature, coinciding with the utter end of my individuality, do we escape the wheel and the need to be reborn in yet another state of frustrating unsatisfactoriness. Look at the wheel of life again. You'll see in the top right hand corner of the diagram a Buddha points to the left. He is pointing the way to enlightenment, which in this particular representation is symbolized by disciples learning at the Buddha's feet. In other representations, the enlightenment might be pictured in other ways. And this is suggestive of the Three Refuges, or the triple gem of Buddhism. When Buddhists chant, they voice taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, which is roughly his teaching, and the Sangha, the order of monks and nuns who submit to this teaching. One of the classic original texts of Buddhism is the Dhammapada, and this is where we are urged to quote, "Take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha, and you will grasp the Four Noble Truths: suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the Noble Eightfold Path that takes you beyond suffering. That is your best refuge, your only refuge. When you reach it, all sorrow falls away." So Buddhist thought is also captured by the Four Noble Truths. And the first truth is that all existence is suffering. Now the word used is dukkha, which is often translated as suffering, but is better translated as unsatisfactory. Shakyamuni came to believe that every state of existence within samsara is necessarily dukkha, even a paradise enjoyed by devas or divas. The second noble truth identifies the cause of such unsatisfactoriness, namely desire or craving. At its root, this is a longing for one's own continued existence as a unique individual. And the third noble truth, that suffering ends when craving is extinguished, involves grasping the reality of non-self, that there is no real me. Only then will there be no thing to hold on to. Only then have I escaped clinging to that which is impermanent. And the fourth noble truth sets out how to achieve this state, the so-called Noble Eightfold Path. And these are right views or beliefs or understanding, right thought, right speech, right conduct, and think of the Five Precepts here, right livelihood. Some professions are off limits, for example those that involve killing or involvement with the sex trade or intoxicants. Then there's right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And as this indicates, the key to solving the problem of unsatisfactoriness is to be found in reshaping the mind until it grasps the threefold nature of reality including the reality of non-self. And such mind control necessarily presupposes and requires control of one's speech, conduct and livelihood. So Buddhist methodology very much centres around the practice of meditation. Just look at the following cartoon. It unintentionally illustrates a major aim of Buddhist meditation: the actualization of non-self. At the climax of the enlightenment scene in the movie The Little Buddha, where Siddhartha is played by Keanu Reeves, the Buddha looks at himself and exclaims, "Architect, finally I have met you. You will not rebuild your house again." And the reply comes, "But I am your house and you live in me." And the Buddha declares, "O Lord of my own ego, you are pure illusion. You do not exist. The earth is my witness." How should we view such beliefs in the light of biblical teaching? There is a great deal that might be said, but at this introductory stage I will make only 3 brief observations. Firstly, Buddhism insists that every person has an inner Buddha nature. Now you might compare that with the Bible's teaching that uniquely essential to every human being is the fact that they are created in God's image. But in actuality, these are radically different conceptions. The realization of Buddha nature involves abandoning any notion of a distinctive, independent, substantial self. And by contrast, followers of Christ are called to treat every human being as a precious individual created in God's image. And so we read in James chapter 3, "With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in God's likeness." It should be unthinkable for us to treat people this way because they're so special as individuals. Secondly, Buddhism has a cyclic understanding of existence, believing in perpetual birth, death and rebirth until enlightenment is attained. By contrast, we read in Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 27 that man is destined to die once and after that to face judgment. Buddhism gives people unlimited numbers of chances to get it right. The Bible teaches that whatever needs to happen for a person to be put right must happen in his or her lifetime. The third thing I think to note is that Buddhism starts with dukkha, or suffering, or unsatisfactoriness, as the problem that must be solved. In the Bible, the problem that has to be dealt with is human sin, rebellion against the Creator. That's the thing that needs to be addressed. The fundamental problem in Buddhism is not a moral problem. And it is assumed that people are ultimately capable of solving the problem of suffering, even if it takes many lifetimes and perhaps millions or even billions of years. By contrast, the Bible teaches that human capability has been so radically damaged by our wickedness that we all suppress the truth. Look at Romans 1:18. And so we are utterly incapable of extricating ourselves from our predicament. Effectively, the Buddhist must save himself or herself. However, Peter speaks for all followers of Christ when before hostile religious authorities he declares, "Salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given to men by which we must be saved."